Your cybersecurity solution is here. Introducing Pentester's Advanced Cybersecurity Suite. Ready for peace of mind? Try it for free. No credit card required. Pentester.com.
It's crazy because there was really very, very few obese kids back then, you know what I mean? Like, because we were so active, we were out all day. Kids today are so unhealthy because they're all in their house on these devices, you know, we had no devices. So it was just a different world. I mean, everybody knew each other. Nobody's mother worked. Very, very, out of all my friends, only two friends of my mother's worked. And that's because they had their fathers passed away when they were kids. So the mother had to go to work. But anybody that had two parents in the house, the mothers didn't work. And it was a better world. No kids were going to school with guns. No kid. I mean, you never heard of a 12-year-old kid committing suicide. I didn't even know what suicide was when I was 12 years old. I mean, today, it's a whole different world out there today than when I was a kid. And New York was a great place. I mean, there was all neighborhoods. Today, I drive to New York today, there are no more neighborhoods. There are no more neighborhoods. You know, every borough had neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods all stuck together, and everybody knew each other, and the mob was prevalent in all the neighborhoods. Every neighborhood had mob presence in it. I mean, almost every neighborhood had a social club, and every neighborhood was not controlled by the mob, but the mob had a big presence in almost every neighborhood.
Okay, headed to Cafe Liberty.
So what was Cafe Liberty?
Cafe Liberty was a cafe that my father opened up in probably the very, very early 70s, maybe 70, 71. He originally opened it up at first with Tony Lee and Jojo Carrazza. When they left East New York, they had a bar in City Line called Bulldogs at first, and they had a club on Eastern Parkway and Atlantic Avenue. And when they decided to move out of Brooklyn and officially make Ozone Park the headquarters, they they opened up a cafe which was named Cafe Liberty because it was on Liberty Avenue. And then Jojo Carrazzo eventually moved out and opened up a club on 77th and 101st Avenue, which became a famous mob hangout across the street from Aldo's Pizzeria. And then my father took sole possession of Cafe Liberty with Tony Lee. And later on, when my father went to prison and Tony Lee passed away, Cafe Liberty was taken over by Skinny Don Pizzonia, who was a captain in the Gambino family. So it's been a really big mob hangout for many, many, many years until they closed. And now, I don't know, now it's just a place of business. It was always across the street from this Jewish cemetery. And this is funny because that place over there, that white building over there, used to be a bar called Connie's. Right there, that white building right there was a bar. Now it's an apartment. And we used to go in there on Saturdays. My father used to go there on Saturdays and drink. And we actually used to eat lunch in there. During the deer season, people used to bring venison. People used to bring venison meat to us. And we used to cook it in there.
I mean, my father was my role model, but he was a criminal. He was a wise guy. So, you know, like, you know, but, you know, I made sure my son, you know, went to work. You know, I knew I didn't make the same mistakes with my son as my father made with me. And my daughter, you know, is my daughter, you know, but I give all the, you know, I thank God they both had good mothers. You know what I mean? Because I was in prison and, you know, and they had really good mothers. When I did a lot of time in prison, you know, throughout their lives, and their mothers raised them, and they had really good mothers, and I thank God for that, you know. Yeah, so a lot of people are putting their clean dates on my website, and it's great, you know. Any day, you know, anybody that's fighting addiction that's clean for a day is a miracle. It's a miracle, you know. It's easy to use. It's hard to stay clean and get clean and stay clean. And change, you know, you got to change your life. You know, you can't just get clean and be the same person you were, because that person's going to take you back out the door. You know, recovery is about change. And when I hear stories about people that are, you know, clean and sober, you know, it makes me feel really good. You know, it gets me through the day. So the question is, how do I think the mob, like wise guys like my own man and John Gotti, would respond to stuff like this? Well, this is how they would respond. If this happened in Ozone Park, the person with the gun, the migrant with the gun that robbed a person that lived in Ozone Park, he would die. That's what would happen. They would kill him. You know, it's simple and plain. He would die. It wouldn't happen. There'd be dead bodies in the street. That's you know, and I'm not saying that's the way we should deal with it, or I'm not saying that's the right. Let's not get confused. I'm not saying people should go start shooting these migrants. We're talking about a different era. Talking about back in the day, if this would have happened in our neighborhoods, these people, there'll be dead bodies, without a doubt. You know what I mean? It's terrible. It's terrible what's going on. The country's on fire. The world's on fire. You know, I don't like to get political, but come on, it's every day you put on the news. It's crazy. It's now you got this guy that's incompetent. He's the president. That this report came out that the guy don't even remember when he was vice president. I mean, how scary is this? This guy, it's scary that this senile old man is the president of the United States. It's scary. And the liberal media, they want to cover it up. I mean, that's even scarier, that they don't even want to face reality. I mean, common sense, come on. What's going on? Look what this guy created. I mean, it's terrible. You know, so how would Fat Andy or John Gotti or anybody feel about, you know, all this transgender stuff? Listen, you know, I'm not homophobic, you know. I have a niece that's gay, and I love her to death. She was just here with her girlfriend. They're a beautiful couple. Back in the day, if a transgender woman, a man dressed up as a woman, went into a female bathroom, and my mother or my sister or somebody's wife, a wise guy's wife was in there, that person would be in a lot of trouble. Unfortunately, they would be in a lot of trouble. It wouldn't go well for that person. That's all I could say. Oh, okay. So I'm blocked out. Yeah. So from left to right, my father, Fat Andy, Jojo Carrazza, who became the consigliere of the Gambino family, Lenny DiMaria, who became a captain. This is all before they got made. My father straightened all them out. Tony Lee, of course, was a soldier, my father's partner. And at the end is Nicky Carrazza, who became the acting boss of the Gambino family. But at this point in time, they were all associates of the Gambino family. The only one that was made was Tony Lee and my own man. They were the only two that were made in this picture. Lenny, Jojo, and Nicky were still associates. This was at the Copa. We went to see Tom Jones at the Copa. If John Gotti would have got blown up in the car, who would have been the boss of the Gambino family, without a doubt, Frankie DeCicco. He was the underboss. He would have definitely been the boss. And probably Sammy would have been his underboss, but Frankie DeCicco for sure. It would have been reversed. I mean, Frankie DeCicco unfortunately got blown up, and John didn't. And John stood the boss. It would have just been reversed. If John would have got blown up, Frankie DeCicco would have stepped in as the boss. So out of all the time I was in prison, the question is, what was the worst thing I experienced in prison? The worst thing I experienced in prison was when my kids came to visit me and they left. That was the worst thing you could experience, when your kids cry at the end of the visit, when are you coming home? That's the worst thing you could experience in prison. And the holidays. I mean, prison is weird because the days go by fast, but the years go by slow. And the reason why that is because it's everything's on a timer. So you only can move around prison certain times on the hour. So everything's structured, and the same things happen every day at the same time. Nothing changes in prison. It's like that movie Groundhog Day. Everything is the same. So you get into a routine. You wake up in the morning and you hit the yard, and you do the same thing every day. And the days go by fast, and there's a lot of movement. But around the holidays, the movement slows down because a lot of the staff, the people that work in the prison go on vacations. So the movements in the prison slow down. So time for me, I can only speak for me, how I experienced the time I did. Everybody does time differently. Everybody does their own time. For me, the holidays were the worst, Christmas time, because the prison slowed down. So things closed and movement stopped. If you took a class, it stopped. So the whole place just slowed down because, like I said, people go on vacation and all that stuff. So that was probably the worst times for me in prison. Was after my family left on a visit. I used to get it was I would just lay in bed and stare at I would just go back to my cell and I would just lay in bed and stare at the wall, and then it used to pass and then I would just get back into my bed. But that's probably the worst times in prison for me anyway. Out of all the time I did, I'm very lucky that I had a lot of verbal arguments and almost came to blows with people. But out of all the time I did, I only was in actually 2 physical altercations. And out of all the time I did, actually where we put hands on each other, and that was it. But a couple of almost bad beefs. Because you got to understand, for mob guys or stand-up guys, as they say, every prison we went to, there was already guys there that were established, that nobody fucked with. So when you got there, you were just brought right into that crowd. So, and everybody knew that if they messed with you, they would have to mess with all these other guys. So every prison I went to, there was people already waiting there for me. So, the arguments, were minimal, and I had no bad habits. When I was younger, I did drugs. I smoked weed and everything, but I had my own weed brought into the prison, so I didn't have to reach out to any. There's 3 rules in prison, cardinal rules, that if you don't break them, you're not gonna. I didn't gamble. I didn't take drugs. I didn't go, with homosexuals. That's where all the beefs are. All the beefs are behind bad habits, and I didn't have any bad habits. I did my time. I read my books. I did my exercise. I minded my business. We had our own crew. The mob guys all stuck together. So, we had no, believe it or not, the most arguments I had were with other Italian guys, with other mob guys. I never really had an argument with anybody else. I mean, when I was in Attica, I used to use the Latin King phone, the Jamaican posse phone. They loved me. They used to come get me and put me on their phone. Because in Attica, there was 4 phones. They were run by the gangs, and me and Teddy Persico, who was a captain in the Colombo family, and this guy Sally Dogs, who was a captain in the Genovese family. They were all in Attica, and we used to use the Latin King phone because we didn't have no phone. There was only a couple of us, but we were tied in with we used to use the Latin King phone. But I was friends with everybody. The Creps. They used to come on, come use my phone. You got to make a phone call. So we got along with everybody. We argued amongst ourselves more than anything. Out of all the prisons I ever been in, was the worst. Attica was the worst. People getting cut up every day, razors cut. It was bad. Attica was bad, very violent. I mean, not with us. We were okay there, but a lot of stuff went on in Attica. A lot of drugs. Like there's a lot of drugs in prison, especially in state prisons. A lot of drugs, and they get these buses that come up from Manhattan. So in state prisons, the city has buses that leave from Manhattan and all these neighborhoods, and the buses go right up to the prisons there, and they come on weekends. So on Saturday, the buses came, and all the drugs were brought in. So Saturday night, like, I didn't go out to the yard in Attica. Like, we didn't go out to the yard on Saturday night because it was standing room only in the yard because everybody was getting drugs and buying drugs. And, we didn't go out to the yard. We stood, and in Attica, what was good about Attica was we had TV. We had 13-inch TVs in our cell. And for those of you who have never been in prison, having a TV in your cell is a big deal. Let me tell you, a really big deal. And I got the Yes station, so I was able to watch all my Yankee games, which was really a big deal. And so We didn't go out to the yard on Saturday and Sunday nights because that was all, if I was using drugs, I would have went out to the yard. Don't get me wrong, but I was clean when I was in Attica. So I had no business going out to the yard that night because the buses came and all the people, would get their balloons and, they'd be smuggling all the drugs into the prison. It wasn't really, they smoked weed in the yard, but a lot of it was, dope and coke, a lot of heroin was smuggled in. Balloons, kiss the balloons, swallow them, stick them up your ass, believe me, people get creative, you know what I mean, in jail, but mostly balloons. Mostly they would smuggle balloons and they would swallow them, or they would, in their visit, they would, stick them up their ass. And, that was the main way how to get drugs in, people swallowing balloons. But a lot of it was heroin, coke, crack. They were smoking crack in there, but most of it was heroin, weed. They used to sell a joint for 5 packs of cigarettes. And you smoke in the yard. You smoke like a cigarette. You walk the yard and you smoke a joint.